That's true. I don't even know where to answer that. Matt, go ahead. Oh, that's what you're saying. Yes, correct. You are right. Yes. So if Saturday is the Sabbath day, then Sunday is Monday, is what he asked. And Matt helped me understand how to answer that. So, yes, you are correct. The first day of the work week was Sunday for them. Yep. And we actually dealt with this. It was really hard because I've told you all this story before, but it answers your question, and I thought about it today while I was studying. In Mongolia, the Russians changed their days of the week when they didn't take over. They allowed them to take over. But when they were part of the USSR, they changed their days of the week. So they got rid of Sunday being the first day of the week, and instead it was day one. That's literal. The translation was one day, Nick day. Nick 1, day 1 was your first day of work. Day 2, your second day of work. Day 3, your third day of work. Day 4, your fourth day of work. Day 5, your fifth day of work. And then half day was what they called Saturday because it was your half day of work. And so they changed their whole way of talking about the days of the week because it was based on the work week. So yes, to answer your question, Sunday would be the first day of work for the Jews. Yep. And they worked 6 days. This 40-hour week thing is a brand new concept in the world. For the last 6,000 years, there was no such thing as a 5-day work week. And really, a 6-day work week is a new concept here. Before this, they had a 7-day work week. So, good question. I just didn't have a good answer till Matt helped me. Who was the law given to? Let's look at Exodus 31. Exodus 31, verse 13. And in the future, I'm going to try to call on y'all to read more, but tonight I guess I'll just keep reading. You are to speak to the people of Israel and say, above all, you shall keep my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I, the Lord, sanctify you. You shall keep the Sabbath because it is holy for you. Everyone who profanes it, it shall be put to death. Whoever does any work on it, the soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh is a Sabbath of solemn rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day shall be put to death. Therefore the people of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout their generations as a covenant. It is a sign forever between me and who? The people of Israel. That in 6 days the Lord made heaven and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. And he gave to Moses, when he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone written with the finger of God. So, who was the law of Sabbath given to? Israel. It was only for Israel. During the patriarchal age, before the Mount Sinai, had they, not God, had humans ever practiced Sabbath? Deuteronomy chapter 5. Deuteronomy 5, beginning in verse 1. And if you want to make a note in yours, I also wrote down verse 12. You're going to want that too. And Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the rules that I speak in your hearing today, and you shall learn them and be careful to do them. The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Mount Horeb, not with our fathers did the Lord make this covenant, but with us. who are all of us here alive today, the Lord spoke with you face to face at the mountain out of the midst of the fire. And then go down to verse 12, we get into those Sabbath laws. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall work and do all your work, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your ox or your donkey or any of your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates, that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. All right, we'll pause there because we're going to have another question from verse 15 later. So, was it observed by humans before Moses commanded it? No. So that kind of helps us out. We've now got a definition of who was it given through Moses, who was it given to the Israelites, when was it given? It only started at this generation of Israelites. Before that, so i.e., the patriarchal age, did not observe a day of rest. Why was the Sabbath given? I want you to note verse 14. He didn't write that down. I'm going to add that to our question. What does he say in verse 14 is the reason why this is observed? Okay, not yet. That's 15. We're going to get that in just a second. What did you say? Verse 14. I'm sorry. Maybe I am quiet. Verse 14, why? It's a Sabbath to the Lord. All right, there's reason one. What else in verse 14? Okay, so no one, no animal, and then notice the very last phrase there, not even servants can work. So, and it says the reason why, the servant may rest as well as you. It is very, well, it is not. In this time period, it was not normal for anyone to have a day off work. But if you're going to get a day off work and you're the boss man, you're still going to make the servant work, right? And so God put into His law that even the lowest man on the totem pole gets a day off. Even your animals, Harley.
I wonder if it had become a habit, maybe, that because it's even sojourners.
Yes.
Maybe people were bringing in people from outside of the reservation to do the work.
Yeah. They do a lot of that where they find a way around God's rules. Where a Gentile, or not even a Gentile, like a Samaritan or someone will say, we can do this on the Sabbath. And so, for example, in the prophets, the people would come to the gate to sell their gear that they had brought in on the Sabbath day, and the prophet had to finally force the people to say, run them off, because the foreigners are trying to get you to break the rules by standing right outside the gate selling things on the Sabbath day. So yeah, that's a good point, Harley. Ron?
Years ago, I think they called them blue law.
Yes.
Where you could be open, but you couldn't sell anything, so this creates labor.
Interesting. So you could have a store open, but not something that required manual labor with the blue laws? Harley?
More than just that. Missouri practiced it up until in the 60s.
Wow.
In that case, service stations were closed.
Okay.
There was only a few stores that were allowed to build that you might need some merchandise, but you couldn't sell certain items. That was wrong to say.
This sounds just like the question we're going to have in a minute about how hard it was to figure out the rules. Sounds like the blue laws were the same way. If it's labor, you can't be open. So probably if they had had self-pumps for the gas station back then, you'd have been fine. But the guy pumping your gas can't be open, but a grocery store can be open, but only certain items can be sold. That's very similar to the Jews. That's interesting. Kendall?
So
No alcohol. Only the necessities. So COVID rules. Okay. Yeah, okay. All right. We would do similar in Mongolia, where on government holidays and important days, alcohol couldn't be sold in the country. But everything else could be, but not alcohol. So blue laws. Why was the Sabbath given? Reason number 3. Now it's your turn, Rosie. Verse 15. To remind them that God had saved them, and they used to be what? Slaves. So don't mistreat your slave. So part of this is him forcing them to treat people better than they had been treated. Part of the Sabbath day is, you've had year after year after year of making bricks. Don't do that to someone else. Even if you have a slave, they have to get a day off every week. God is elevating the slave. Yeah, that's true. Your translation's going to say here, verse 15 actually in ESV does have the word slave, which is surprising. The ESV has a big long page at the beginning of the book that makes me angry, that tells you that we're going to intentionally not translate the word slave, because we don't want you to think of mistreated slaves. The word slave in the Bible does not necessarily mean the worst slaves in the worst states in America. And so because of the fear of people taking it that way, a lot of times they'll call them bondservants. But bondservant is a slave too. It's just they don't want you to think of all of them as being abused, mistreated slaves. So a lot of times the translation won't use the word slave, they'll use the word bondservant, but it's the same thing. Arthur, what does the King James have there? Does it have slave? Verse 15. Yes, sir. Deuteronomy 5. Okay. So it has the word servant. So it could be either one. All right. What was forbidden on the Sabbath? There's a lot of things forbidden. Let's go back to our original passage, Exodus 20. I think I heard someone say that whatever the blue laws got rid of. Probably pretty close. Exodus 20 verses 9 to 10. I've already read this, so see if you can find in there what was not allowed. Because we always think we're going to find the exception. We're going to find a way around his law. So he said, all right, even kindling a fire counts as work. They had to get very specific, but you want him to be very specific, because breaking this law would result in what? Death. Ron?
The Seventh-day Adventist, is that because there are certain interpretations?
Yes. Ron asked about the Seventh-day Adventists. They still believe in the seventh-day Sabbath. Yeah. Good question. Exodus 16:23. I'm going to read verse 22, and honestly, we could read for a lot further than that. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers each. And when all the leaders of the congregation came and told Moses, he said to them, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of solemn rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake, and boil what you will boil, and all that is left over lay aside to be kept till the morning." So they laid it aside till the morning, as Moses had commanded them, and it did not stink, and there was no worms in it. And Moses said, "Eat it today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather, but on the 7th day, which is a Sabbath, there will be none." So what was forbidden in this passage? What could you not do? You couldn't cook, and you couldn't boil. And when you put the whole paragraph, you also couldn't gather manna, which would not be a lifetime rule, so that's probably why he didn't include it in Exodus 20 and those chapters. But in this time period, for this 40 years of wandering, you couldn't gather manna, which I think is a great example, because how easy is it to gather manna? It's pretty much walk out in the yard, right? I mean, it's not a lot of work to get this bread. But he's showing them even this is considered work. So that will help you later when you don't know all the specifics of what is Sabbath and what is work. Well, even gathering manna was considered work. Now, you can't bake and you can't boil. What are they baking and boiling? The bread. I don't think I'd ever realized that. So I'd always kind of figured that you could just, and I think you could just pop the manna in your mouth, but apparently you could also prepare it into different types of dishes by boiling it or baking it, giving it a different flavor or slant. I don't think I'd ever realized that you could bake and boil your manna. All right, Acts 1:12. And this is a popular phrase by New Testament times. We're just giving you one example of it. Then they returned to Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is near Jerusalem, a Sabbath day's journey away. What could you not do on Sabbath day? Travel. You could not travel. Now, I remembered there being a big, long argument about this that the Jews have. I went ahead and looked up the numbers for you. Depending on who you believe, it's between half a mile and 7/8 of a mile is the max you can travel on a Sabbath day. So anything more than, so let's just round up. If you hit a mile, you're sinning. Okay? The reason why, this is what, and I felt like it was a half a mile each way, but that's not what I could find today. So the reason why was because they measured from the city center of the temple to the outside of Jerusalem, and they said, the only place you need to be going on Sabbath day, if you're not going to worship with your, to have a Bible study, time of worship with your personal family, is to the temple. And so they measured the distance to the temple and enough to get back from the temple, and they said anything further than that means you're traveling, and so you cannot do that on Sabbath. So that's how they came up with that number.
And that is the Sabbath day's journey?
Yes. So a Sabbath day's journey means a distance that is legal on Sabbath day. So about half a mile-ish. Half to 3/4. What was the consequence of violating the Sabbath day? I think y'all know that, so we won't turn there. Death. This guy was pretty interesting in that passage of Numbers 15, if you already read it at home. Why was he killed? What did he violate? He was gathering wood. And this is interesting. They didn't know how to deal with it. They're like, it feels like he broke this is my phrase, feels like he broke the Sabbath day, but we don't know, so they had to consult God. And yes, he had broke the Sabbath day. Why do you think that was? We don't have the answer. But why do you think that was, that gathering wood would be considered work? Because you use to start a fire, and God had already said you can't make a fire in your house on the Sabbath day. He also had told them you couldn't even gather little bitty pieces of manna on the grass. So gathering wood probably should have been obvious to you that you shouldn't have been doing that. So he's working on the Sabbath day. So he got stoned to death. How did God make the provision for Israel when they were needing to eat the manna? We already read this one earlier. So when they needed to eat the manna, what was his rule so that they wouldn't starve on the Sabbath day? 2 days supply, and if you want to cook it, you better cook it on the day before. That has not changed. I mean, did not change in the Bible times. Amongst Mosaical law, if you wanted to cook something, you could cook as big of a meal as you wanted. You just had to have it all done the day before and then just pull it back out on Saturday to eat, which is common. This class doesn't get into it because this is more conjecture. It's not in the scripture, but we know it for a fact. Do y'all know what most people did on Sabbath day? The most common thing was to have a gathering with friends or family that lived near enough to you in someone's home. You eat meal together, you study the Word, you sing, you pray, you talk about what God did for your great-great-great-grandparents. It's just a time of devotion and worship with your family and friends. So just a time where you didn't have anything else to do, so why not spend time talking about God? So that's how a lot of them used it. So if you wanted a nice meal with your family, you're going to have to prep it on Friday because you can't cook on Saturday. I think I saw Arthur's hand.
Yeah, this thought came to my mind. What if you ran into a Roman soldier and he compelled you to carry his pack or his sword 1 mile, and Jesus said, go 2. Now you're not supposed to go with him for the 7 minutes.
That is a good one.
One or the other.
I mean, technically, if he compels you to carry it 1 mile, that would be violating the law. By the time period of the New Testament, they weren't that. They were wishy-washy.
But did you imagine just what you were saying? They didn't get out on the road.
No.
They didn't get out in the byways.
No.
They couldn't go anywhere, so why would you?
Yep. And for that reason alone, it might be good to stay in your local neighborhood with your family so that you don't get compelled by a soldier. Who was accused of violating the Sabbath? Let's look. Y'all know the answer. Who was accused of violating the Sabbath? Jesus. Over and over and over. Yeah. Actually, in this passage, they're accusing Jesus as the ringleader, but really, who are they accusing in Luke 6? Has someone already read that? His apostles. But they're getting on to him as the master of the apostles. Now, let's read, and this can be taken... Okay, everything under this little paragraph can be extremely taken out of context. And I watched a couple videos on this today. That one from Don Blackwell is pretty good. We have to be careful that we don't misapply what he was saying. So let's read it. Luke 6, verse 5. And he said, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. That was his response to them. So what was his reply? I am Lord of the Sabbath. Now, what did that mean? Some of this is conjecture, but I think we need to be careful how we conjecture on this one. What did that mean? I'm the Lord of Sabbath. Bill?
I typically say when I don't understand something, what I know it doesn't mean.
Yeah?
It doesn't mean that Jesus said, I get to violate it.
That's exactly right.
Because he lived the law.
I've heard a lot of people explain it that way, of, I'm Lord of Sabbath, I don't have to follow the Sabbath. But if that's true, then he's Lord of all of the Mosaical law, so he could have broke every one of the rules. So that cannot be what it meant. I think I saw your hand again.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that I think he gave an example of David doing something that could appear to be in violation of the law.
Yes.
But the purpose of David didn't violate the purpose of the showbread under the law.
Yep.
I think him saying, I am Lord of the Sabbath means I apparently know more than you do about what's going on with the Sabbath.
That's a good thought. Because with the argument of David, people go to the David passage that he And you need to read your words in red if you don't have time tonight. But the David passage, people will go to that and say, see, David broke the law. Jesus is saying I can break the law. No. He's showing that what could be perceived as breaking the law is not necessarily breaking the law. I know the law better than you could ever know the law. I'm the one that made this law. All right, in the next verse, verse 9, what question does he ask back to them? And this is probably one of our, not our most important for Christians, but one of the most important takeaways as far as the Sabbath goes just in general. So they kept trying to constantly prove that Jesus broke the law, but he got the whole heart of the law, and the whole heart of the law was doing good things for humans. And if you're going to memorize one quote, not necessarily about what it means to us as Christians today, but as far as what it meant to them, that's Mark 2:27. The Sabbath, was the Sabbath made for man or man for the Sabbath? And Jesus asked that question. What he's saying is, Sabbath was never meant to be some horrible burden upon humans. It was meant to actually help humanity. That God is forcing you to have a day, was forcing them to have a day off work, was forcing them all the way down to the ox that bears the burden and the slave to get to have a day of rest. Harley.
I was wondering, I taught for 37 years, and that was my work.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus and the temple teaching, they didn't complain about that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And he will point that out at other times, that the Levites every single Saturday broke the Sabbath because they were slaughtering animals. They were doing major work. But part of keeping the temple law meant breaking the Sabbath law because that was their work. Yes, sir.
It doesn't say it here in Luke 6. There's another part I remember reading where Jesus said, "My Father in heaven works on Sabbath." So
Yes. Yes. All right. Before we end, though, we need to get to the Christian part. What does Paul say to the Christian concerning the Sabbath? Colossians 2:16 and 17. Therefore, let no one pass judgment on you in questions of food and drink, or with regard to a festival or a new moon or a Sabbath. These are a shadow of the things to come, but the substance belongs to Christ. Let no one disqualify you, insisting on asceticism, worship of angels, going on in detail about visions, puffed up about reason by sensuous mind, not holding fast to the head, and continuing on. What does Paul say about the Sabbath? It was a shadow, but we've now got the real thing. And what was the real thing? Jesus Christ. All right, so let me summarize what all we covered real quick as far as it goes for Christians. Number one, the law was only given to a specific group of people, not even all Israelites, because the Israelites that lived all the way up until the mountain didn't even get it. Those that exited from Exodus, that died, had never received it. The patriarchs had never received it. It was given for a specific group of people. Number two, especially with that verse 15 of that passage that Rosie gave us to answer from, the specific, number one specific reason he gives for the Sabbath was to remind them that he had taken them out of Egypt and that they had been slaves. So every Saturday was supposed to be a reminder of that. Don't forget, I saved you from Egypt. And number three, we've got the real thing now. We've got the substance. It was a shadow, but we have Jesus Christ. Now, not written in your book, and not here's another takeaway that I would also say personally. That being said, taking time to where we have our focus on God is not a bad thing. We cannot condemn that. And so, if our time together is so rushed because we have to get back to work, we can lose our focus too. That being said, Christians in the first century, a lot of them were slaves, and they probably had to hurry to get back to work. But if we can free our schedule up to where we can have more time together, like they did with Sabbath, why wouldn't we?
Just real quick, I mean, what are we doing, man, in the Sundays when we're just thinking Jesus and the sacrifice?
Yep.
And our slaves.
Yes.
So, our approach to all of humanity should be the same thing. It's still the same reminder. Everything good we have is because of God.
Yep.
If we don't take time to remember that, we're all slaves.
Yeah. Matt said that Sunday, one of our big reminders is that before Jesus Christ, we were also slaves. And he brought us out of that. And so we get to remember that every week too.